Oh, hello there. I am wearing a shirt. It's almost translucent, so it looks like I have weird chest hair, but it's yellow. So it's in this light, it's not coming out too clearly. Anyway, we're up to 1755 now. Saturday, the 1st February, the 1st of February, 1755 to be exact, when Johnson is 46. In 1755, we beheld him to great advantage, his degree of Master of Arts conferred upon him, his dictionary published, his correspondence animated, his benevolence exercised. A letter here. To the Reverend Mr. Thomas Warden. Dear Sir, I wrote to you some weeks ago, but believe did not direct accurately, and therefore know not whether you had my letter. I would likewise write to your brother, but know not where to find him. I now begin to see land, after having wandered, according to Mr. Warburton's phrase, in this vast sea of words. What reception I shall meet with on the shore I know not, whether the sound of bells and acclamations of the people, which Ariosto talks of in his last canto, or general murmur of dislike, I know not. Whether I shall find upon the coast a calypso that will court, or Polypheme that will resist. But if Polypheme, I forget how to pronounce that, the Cyclops. Is that the Cyclops? I forget it from the Odyssey. But if Polypheme comes, have at his eyes. Sick, original, he said eyes there. I hope, however, that critics will let me be at peace, for though I do not much fear their skill and strength, I am a little afraid of myself. It would not willingly feel so much ill will in my bosom as literary quarrels are apt to excite. Mr. Baretti is about a work for which he is in great want of cresciam bene, which you may have again when you please. There is nothing considerable done or doing among us here. We are not perhaps as innocent as villagers, but most of us seem to be as idle. I hope, however, you are busy and should be glad to know what you are doing. I am, dear sir, your humble servant, Sam Johnson. To the same. Dear sir, I received your letter this day with great sense of the favor that has been done me. Footnote here from Boswell. From Warden. His degree has now passed, according to the usual form, the suffrages of the heads of colleges, but was not yet finally granted by the university. It was carried without a single dissentient voice. So Johnson here is referring to his honorable degree he got. Anyway, that favor you have done for me, for which I return my most sincere thanks, and entreat you to pay to Mr. Wise such returns as I ought to make for so much kindness so little deserved. I sent Mr. Wise the lexicon, and afterwards wrote to him, but know not whether he had either the book or letter. Be so good as to contrive to inquire. But why does my dear Mr. Warden tell me nothing of himself? Where hangs the new volume? This is referring to on Spencer, the book Warden was working on. Can I help? Let not the past labor be lost for want of a little more, but snatch what time you can from the hall, and the pupils, and the coffee houses, and the parks, and complete your design. I am, dear sir, and etc. London, February 4th, 1755, Sam Johnson. Another letter to Warden? To the same. Dear sir, I had a letter last week from Mr. Wise, but have yet heard nothing from you, nor know in what state my affair stands. Footnote from Warden. Principal of St. Mary Hall of Oxford. Nope. She's talking about the degree there. Duh. Okay. I'm going to start this letter over again. Dear sir, I have a letter for last week from Mr. Wise, but have not heard nothing from you, nor know in what state my affair stands, of which I beg you to inform me, if you can tomorrow, by the return of the post. Mr. Wise sends me word that he and not had the Finnic lexicon yet, which I sent some time ago, and if he has it not, you must inquire after it. However, do not let your letters stay for that. Your brother, who is a better correspondent than you, and not much better, sends me word that your pupils keep you in college. But do they keep you from writing too? Let them at least give you time to write to. Dear sir, your most affectionate, and etc. London, February 13, 1755. It's writing a letter a week here, or less. Sam Johnson. Another letter to Warden. Dear sir, Dr. King. No, he's not talking about Martin Luther King here. He's talking about the principal of St. Mary Hall at Oxford. He brought with him the diploma from Oxford, I guess, to Johnson. Dear Dr. King was with me a few minutes before your letter. This, however, is the first instance in which your kind intentions to me have ever been frustrated. Footnote here, I suppose Johnson means that my kind intention of being the first to give him the good news of the degree being granted was frustrated because Dr. King brought it before my intelligence arrived. I have now the full effect of your care and benevolence, and am far from thinking it a slight honor or small advantage, since it will be put the enjoyment of your conversation more frequently in the power of, dear sir, your most obliged and affectionate Sam Johnson. P.S. I have enclosed a letter to the Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Hudsford, President of Trinity College, which you will read, and if you like it, seal and give him. London, February 1755. Boswell here. As the public will doubtless be pleased to see the whole progress of this well-earned academical honor, I shall insert the Chancellor of Oxford's letter to the University, extracted from the Convocation Register, Oxford, the diploma, and Johnson's letter of thanks to the Vice-Chancellor. Of course, because we have to read that. So this first is the Chancellor, I believe's letter to the University. Following will be the diploma, and then Johnson's letter of thanks to the Vice-Chancellor. So let's begin with the fanfare. To the Reverend Dr. Hudsford, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Oxford, to be communicated to the heads of houses, not the heels of houses, heads of houses, and proposed in convocation. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, and gentlemen, Mr. Samuel Johnson, who was formerly of Pembroke College, having very eminently distinguished himself by the publication of a series of essays excellently calculated to form the manners of the people, and in which the cause of religion and morality is everywhere maintained by the strongest powers of argument and language, and who shortly intends to publish a dictionary of the English tongue, formally formed on a new plan, and executed with the greatest labor and judgment, I persuade myself that I shall act agreeably to the sentiment of the whole University, in desiring that it may be proposed in convocation to confer on him the degree of Master of Arts by diploma, to which I readily gave my consent, and am, Mr. Vice-Chancellor and gentlemen, your affectionate and friend and servant. Grosvenor Street, February 4th, 1755. Aaron. Now we have, it says at the top here, term SCTI, Hilary, Diploma Magistri Johnson, 1755. There's a footnote here, which is from a later editor, not Boswell. The non-formal part of this document is to this purport. Oh, I see. The whole damn thing's in Latin. So I'm not going to read it, because that sounds silly. But I believe this is a translation down here. The non-formal part of this document is to this purport. Whereas our ancestors insinuated... See, I already sound bad in English. Can you imagine me trying to read the Latin? Whereas her ancestors instituted academic degrees to the end that men of outstanding genius and learning might be distinguished by titles also, And whereas the learned S.J. of Penn College has long been known to the world of letters by writings that have shaped the manners of his countrymen and is ever now laboring at a work of the greatest usefulness in adoring and fixing our native tongue, he is also about to publish an English dictionary compiled with the greatest diligence and judgment. Therefore we, the Chancellor, Masters, and Scholars, have unanimously made the said S.J. a Master of Arts, and we wish him joy of all the rights and privileges that belong to that degree. Well, that's nice. There's also a footnote here from Boswell. I'm trying to see where it's connected to. Oh, it's at the very end of this page. The original is in my possession. And then there's another quoted material here in brackets. Both you and I would think me ungrateful if I failed to express in a letter, the most trifling form of acknowledgement, the pleasure I feel and the honor which, I imagine at your instigation, the Senatus Academicus has done me. I should be equally ungrateful if I did not acknowledge the kindness of the excellent man who has put into my hands the proof of your regard. My pleasure is enhanced by this, that I am enrolled in your ranks at a time when cunning but foolish men are strained every nerve to lessen your authority and to injure the good name of Oxford. I have always opposed them, in so far as an obscure scholar can and always shall. However, if these days of trouble fail in his duty to you and the university, I regard as falling in my duty to virtue and learning, to himself and posterity. Okay, I don't really know what that's quoting here. That doesn't look like the Latin. So, can't help you. Alright, so on the next page, more Latin. Oh, I believe that's what... I mean, it sounds like Johnson's writing to the Chancellor saying that, but there's no indication. The footnote is on the other page, not on a page with his letter. That's a little confusing. Another footnote here. That's part of the... It goes to the Latin quaver eximius. We may conceive what a high gratification must have been to Johnson to receive his diploma from the hands of the great Dr. King, whose principles were so congenial with his own. And another footnote. The words in italics are allusions to passages in Mr. Warden's poem called The Progress of Discontent, now lately published. Oh, okay, so that last footnote I just mentioned is for a part in English that's down at the bottom here. So we got one page of Latin, Diploma Magistri Johnson. Second page says Domini Doctore Hudsford Oxonius Academiae Vice Cancellario, which I believe is the letter Johnson wrote to the Vice Chancellor. He wrote it in Latin for some reason. I read you the translation of that, I believe, as well as the translation of the diploma. Now we're moving back on into our good English native tongue. So, to the Reverend Mr. Thomas Warden. Dear Sir, after I received my diploma, I wrote you a letter of thanks with a letter to the Vice-Chancellor and sent another to Mr. Wise, but have heard from nobody since and begin to think myself forgotten. It is true I sent you a double letter, and you may fear an expensive correspondent, but I would have taken it kindly if you had returned the trouble. And what is a double letter to a petty king than having fellowship in fines can sleep without a modus in his head? So that those are from those italics parts there, which would be petty king, fellowship in fines, and modus in the head are from a poem Morden wrote. Dear Mr. Warden, let me hear from you and tell me something. I care not what, so I hear it but from you. Something I will tell you. I hope to see my dictionary bound and lettered next week, Vasta Mole Superbus, proud in its vast bulk. And I have a great mind to come to Oxford at Easter, but you will not invite me. Shall I come uninvited or stay here, where nobody perhaps would dismiss me if I went? Her choice, but such is the world, too, dear sir, your etc. London, March 20th, 1755, Sam Johnson. I'm getting from these that Sam Johnson's a little needy. He needs to be written to all the frickin' time. God, give him... These people are busy. Give him a break. Although I guess maybe Warden's the guy who gave all these letters, so I guess he likes the attention. Or he wouldn't give them to Boswell. Another letter to Warden. Dear sir, though not to write, when a man can write so well, is an offence sufficiently heinous, yet I shall pass it by. I am very glad that the Vice-Chancellor was pleased with my note. I shall impatiently expect you at London, that we may consider what to do next. I intend in the winter to open a bibliothèque, and remember that you are to subscribe a sheet a year. Let us try, likewise, if we cannot persuade your brother to subscribe another. My book is now coming in luminis horas, or into the bright coasts of light, to quote Lucretius. What will be its fate? I know not, nor think much, because thinking is to no purpose. I think, methinks Johnson protests too much here. It must be stand the censure of the great vulgar and the small, of those that understand it, and that understand it not. But in all this I suffer not alone. Every writer has the same difficulties, and perhaps every writer talks of them more than he thinks. You will be pleased to make my compliments to all my friends, and be so kind as ever at every idle hour, as to remember, dear sir, your and etc., March 25th, 1755, London, Sam Johnson. Boswell here again. Dr. Adams told me that this scheme of a bibliothèque was a serious one, for upon his visiting him one day, he found his parlor floor covered with parcels of foreign and English literary journals, and he told Dr. Adams he meant to undertake a review. How, sir, said Dr. Adams, can you think of doing it alone? All branches of knowledge must be considered in it. Do you know mathematics? Do you know natural history? Johnson answered, Why, sir, I must do as well as I can. My chief purpose is to give my countrymen a view of what is doing in literature upon the continent. And I shall have in a good measure the choice of my subject, for I shall select such books as I best understand. Dr. Adams suggested that as Dr. Matty had just then finished his Bibliothèque Britannique, which was a well-executed work, giving foreigners an account of British publications, he might, with great advantage, assume him as an assistant. He, said Johnson, the little black dog, I'd throw him into the Thames. The scheme, however, was dropped. In one of his little memorandum books, I find the following hints for his intended review of literary journal. And I quote, The annals of literature, foreign as well as domestic, imitate Leclerc, Bale, Babriac. Infelicity of journals in England, works to the learned. We cannot take it all. Sometimes copy from foreign journalists. Always tell. Well, I guess that bibliothèque didn't happen. Too bad. Now we have a letter to Dr. Birch. Sir, March 29th, 1755. I have sent some parts of my dictionary, such as were at hand, for your inspection. The favor which I beg is, that if you do not like them, you will say nothing. I am, sir, your most affectionate, humble servant, Sam Johnson. Now a letter for a change from Birch, not Sam Johnson, to Mr. Samuel Johnson. Norfolk Street, April 3rd, 1755. Sir, the part of your dictionary which you have favored me with the sight of has given me such an idea of the whole that I most sincerely congratulate the public upon the acquisition of a work long wanted and now executed with an industry, accuracy, and judgment equal to the importance of the subject. You might perhaps have chosen one in which your genius would have appeared to most advantage, but you could not have fixed upon any other in which your labors would have done such substantial service to the present age and to posterity. I am glad that your health has supported the application necessary to the performance of so vast a task, and can undertake to promise you at one, though perhaps the only reward of it, the approbation and thanks of every well-wisher in the harbour to the honour of the English language. I am, with the greatest regard, sir, your most faithful and most affectionate humble servant, Theodore, Birch. Okay, well, we got some diploma talk there, some Latin I can read, and a lot of needy letters from Johnson. Till next time, bye from Boswell.